you an expert, entrepreneur, or small business owner passionate about helping people through life's transitions? The Fresh Starts Expert membership is perfect for you. For just $55 per month, this dynamic membership is designed to boost your business and amplify your brand. Fresh Starts is here to provide you with business development, marketing, coaching, networking, publicity, community engagement, and more. With an SEO-optimized profile, exclusive press opportunities, and weekly co-working and business coaching sessions, you'll connect, grow, and gain visibility like never before. Are you ready to elevate your brand? We can't wait to work with you. Visit freshstartsregistry.com and become a Fresh Starts expert today.
Welcome back to A Fresh Story, the podcast where we have conversations about brave decisions to start over again. I'm Olivia.
And I'm Jenny. And we're so glad you're here today.
Alix Strauss is a trend, culture, and lifestyle journalist, an award-winning 4-time published author and speaker. She is a frequent contributor to the New York Times, among other publications. She is currently on tour with her recently reissued cult classic novel, The Joy of Funerals, which is celebrating its 20th anniversary. Her other books include, based upon availability, and Death Becomes Them, Unearthing the Suicides of the Brilliant, the Famous, and the Notorious. She is also the editor of Have I Got a Guy for You, an anthology of mother-coordinated dating horror stories. Her work has been optioned for several TV and film projects. She has been a featured lifestyle, travel, and trend writer on national morning and talk shows, including ABC, CBS, CNN, and The Today Show. During the past 25 years, she has written over 1,500 articles. She also writes about relationships, marriage, and weddings. I've personally known Alix in the PR and writing world for a long time now, and I'm so excited that you're here today, Alix. Thank you for taking the time to chat with us.
Thank you so much. I'm excited. I mean, I feel, where else can you really talk about divorces, weddings, funerals, writing?
One place.
All in one space. So what you folks are doing is so interesting and so fascinating. And I love that we're finding a space where we can all fit together.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's special. I think we're also very interested in people is what it comes down to. How are you doing today?
I feel every day is like a big goal now. The world is on fire. So I'm never really sure. I am not much for small talk. And I know people like, oh, how are you? Oh, I'm fine. How are you? Oh, that's so cute. Oh my God, that's so cute. Like, that is not me. And I think as people who, all three of us, really appreciate human behavior and are fascinated by it, I would much prefer to have a heartier conversation, a real conversation.
Yeah.
I'm very interested in the not so pretty. I don't want anything that's kind of cute.
I agree. You know, it becomes a problem when you're on play dates with your kids and then the other parents like, how are you? And you're like, let's talk about your trauma. And they're like, what? I don't, no, but we're the same way over here. So that's a great segue. Can you take us back to the beginning of your Fresh Start story?
Sure. It's so interesting too, because I really thought about that question and what became my fresh start, or what was the big moment. And I guess it really was, in some sense, this piece I wrote for the New York Times in 2000. It was actually, I take that back, because the novel came out in 2003, and then here it is 20 years later, and it's been reissued for the 20th anniversary, but also because we're coming off of a pandemic, and there's this loneliness epidemic, and our need for human connection is so strong, and we're lonely, and we haven't been taught how to grieve, and people are just really sad, and we're in a bad place. And now we've been given permission to grieve, and we're now death curious, and people are able to talk about these things, but it's hard to be early to market. And I think that's what happened. So I had this piece in 1998, actually, in the New York Times. And it was about why I liked funerals. And I think that really was a jumping off point for me to look at funerals in such a vastly different way than I think a lot of people were at that time. And it when you tell people that, they have this awful expression and they almost take a step back from you. But now, once you explain it and you say that it's like a reunion and it's a place for everybody to sort of connect, even these strangers that we're all here for the same goal, the same reason, to celebrate someone's life, to honor someone's life, to mourn someone's life, but we're group grieving, so to speak.
Yeah.
There's this connectivity, and I think people then start to understand it. So 20 years ago, when the novel came out, I mean, I don't think people were ready for a title like The Joy of Funerals. And now we have titles like I'm Glad My Mother's Dead, which is number one bestsellers.
Right.
We have grave talkers that are going to people, TikTokers that are going to people's graves and eating meals with them. And,
Yeah.
we're death curious and death, culture savvy. And it's a whole different, and we have so much to grieve that I think we're just in a different place. And I would like to say maybe the world caught up a bit with me. And I don't think it's so difficult, and I don't think it's so unattractive to talk about these things now. So I guess that really was my fresh start, was super friggin' fresh.
Yeah. We love that.
It's funny. I was watching, my husband and I are watching The Sopranos, and there was an episode where somebody passed away and everybody sort of collects at their house. And I said to him, I've always liked those moments when somebody passes away and it's almost, or somebody's sick, and it's almost like time doesn't exist anymore. Everybody drops their responsibilities for like a week and you're just together, and there's food. Like somebody always orders food and you're just sort of like, it doesn't matter. And there is I very much understand that feeling of it's that funeral feeling too, of like you're all together, all of the responsibilities fall away. I think that in the 20 years since the book came out, the internet like allowed us to sort of let our little freak flags fly a little bit and be like, I like that. And then connect with other people that like that. And then we feel less alone and less judged saying that. And then if you can start having those conversations, I think just the way that the internet has come up to sort of greet you and the re-release of the book is an interesting intersection of, like you said, all these things on TikTok and people sharing their stories and talking about these things and feeling less alone in their sort of like weird likes or things that they maybe their mother gave them a weird look about when they were a kid that they enjoyed.
It's so interesting because we're taught, if we're lucky, we're taught how to love, or we're at least taught how to love correctly.
Yeah.
We're never really taught how to grieve.
Mm-mm.
And I think people have a really hard time with that. And now, of course, we're told we can grieve about anything. We've been given permission, not just a person. It's, the grief of losing a job, of losing a home, of a relationship. And I think they're all different types of losses and deaths, and how we're really digesting that and taking that in. And it's a very interesting space to be in now,
Yeah.
So it's fascinating. But
So
I was I would think in certainly the stuff that you're working with and working through, that comes up quite a bit in terms of the death of a relationship, or the death of the loss of a marriage, so to speak.
Yeah, the death of the dream, I think we talk about a lot. And like the death of the dream can come with the end of a relationship, or the end of a career, or the end of a job, or moving even. It comes up a lot.
It does. So I'm so curious, Alix, for somebody to write a book about the joy of funerals, what is your history with funerals? Like because it had to come from somewhere.
So interestingly enough, and I do get asked this a lot, the main character is a funeral attending junkie, if you will, in for lack of better vocabulary. Nina is she's really not able to connect with the small people, and I mean like the small group of people. There are very few people in her world as it is, because she's an only child. And she really can't connect with people in her life, so she goes to other people's funerals because she can connect with the mourners, even though she's a stranger. And she's really brilliant at sliding in and just becoming part of this bigger moment. I'm an only, so that part is very similar to me and Nina, in that I'm the only child, but I'm the only child ever in my family. So as far back as I can trace, my parents could have had many children, and I think it's up for grabs if I'm actually theirs anyway. But if I'm the only child, everybody else has more than one. And I think my mom had like some sort of paper cut, went to the hospital, saw people peering into a window, and I thought she was going shopping. I mean, I think she just pointed to a child like, I'll take that one. My mother hates pain, and I just don't think my mother doesn't like to be uncomfortable. So, and here we are, Jewish people from the Upper East Side. It was a very good combination. So, we weren't really invited to the bigger events. My parents kind of isolated me in some very strange ways from getting to know my family. And so for me, that is where this idea of the funeral became a reunion, because they were family members that I met for the first time. And suddenly there's this sense of belonging, and I'm connected to this person, and this is your Uncle Joe, and this is your cousin Lily, and it's a whole different world. And I never, and then, usually it's one relative that has passed away, but it's great Aunt Edna, and she was 94 and led a great life. So when you're young and you've not been to a funeral before, it really was like a party in some sense.
Right.
And then that made me think, well, what if I had a character that went to other people's funerals and was just so enamored of them? And what if we had all these different interwoven stories where you meet a woman and you're told a death has happened and you're left with the aftermath, but you've never gone to that funeral until the main character connects you or threads you in a very different way. And so I love the idea of playing with form and function. I love the idea of this large puzzle. I love getting an opportunity to have Nina meet all these women that you've already met, but now you get a second version. And I have never been to a funeral I didn't know someone, where I wasn't paying my respect. So that's how Nina and I are very different. It was really just this premise. And it was just so interesting. I mean, it's the most, next to weddings, and we've kind of spoken about this and how they're similar. What's so fascinating about weddings is sort of the starting of a life together, or at least hoping that you're starting the permanent starting of a life together. And a funeral is really the end of a life. And, in between that, you've got these vows and eulogies, and you're learning all this information about the person or the couple that you may not have known. So I think they're the most intense experiences. One is clearly more joyous, but they're still very bonding. And I think they're just very community driven.
You made reference to your parents sort of isolating you from the family. So, but they couldn't avoid the funerals, right?
Yeah, everybody deserves a chance to say goodbye. And I do think there's more pressure show up at a funeral, because everybody, there's a note, who came, who didn't come, and who had work done, who washed their hair, what did they wear? And I think that there's more, there really is a more seriousness to coming to a funeral. And it's your last opportunity, especially if, you've got things that weren't really put to bed. If you have reasons that you weren't speaking, or things you want to apologize for, or just, it is a really big way to connect with other people.
Yeah. I have so many questions. So number one, when you are isolated from a family like that, and I think that we come from a large Jewish family on both sides also. And so we kind of understand there's, especially like bigger enmeshed families, often have very interesting dynamics, right? Like there are kind of subgroups within the family and all of those things. When you do go to a funeral, that is maybe somebody that you didn't know, perhaps, but they're in your family system, you do get the chance to kind of give them a second story, right? Like that is who you see them as from what you are told versus maybe who they really were. And I'm just so curious, like, was writing always something that was part of your system as you were growing up? And when you went to these funerals or these functions? Did you see it from like a, even if you didn't know what it was at the time because you were younger,
processing through the brain
yeah, like
of a
were you
writer?
processing through the brain of a writer?
No, I mean, it's such an interesting question. I was a theater major, and I had done commercials since I was 12 years old, and I had my SAG and after an equity card, and I really was living the life of an actor. I learned to work and work hard very early. I had been in LA here and there for pilot season, and I had never thought of it was really the last thing on my list. Though, strangely enough, there was a psychic that once came to the dorms, and I mean, like really exactly what you think. Someone who is so crazy and out there. She was in a muumuu and she had a bowl cut. I had never seen a bowl cut before. She asked everybody to put their one question into a hat. And as she pulled out the question, she read the question and she would ask, whose question is this? And I thought, well, lady, if you're that much of a psychic, wouldn't you know, here I am, the jaded New Yorker. I'm like, wouldn't you know whose question it is? So I raised my hand. And when she got to, I went the third one that she picked out. And it was, will I be successful in my career? And she said, what career is that? And I thought again, I'm like, lady, I'm doing all the work for you.
Yeah.
And as I started to say acting, she stopped me and she said, no, but in 93, you'll write a play. And I had a moment of good grace not to laugh at her. And they're like, you're crazy. You don't know what you're talking about. But I went back downstairs and I wrote it down, and I didn't think about it. I didn't even think about it until 93, 92. Naked Angels was here in New York City. It was just starting. It was sort of what it was doing for the theater scene, what Sundance had done for films. And you really did get a feeling that if you wrote something, if you wrote a play, you could be in it, and you could have a theater company, and you could produce your own shows. And I really felt like that was a very tangible item to something to really come to fruition. And I thought, well, how hard could it be to write a play? Turns out it's kind of hard.
Yeah.
But I was such a better writer than I was an actor. It was so clear. It was, I mean,
right. But is that because you see the world? Like, I'm a writer too, and I love to write fiction. And when I write fiction, I see it as a movie in my head. And I think that that's why my fiction, when people read it, they're like, wow, this is so descriptive, right? You have it feels like you're reading a movie. I've always wanted to write movies and produce movies. I wonder if that's how you see things, is through, like, really, when you write, do you see the people as real people and all of that in your head?
oh, yeah. I think for a number of years, people thought I had roommates, but it's just me acting out all the parts. So yes, it's very hard not to see something as a film or a movie, or even just putting these characters, whether it's in this space or, in that first chapter in the cemetery. I mean, I went to a cemetery and I laid down very Meisner-esque,
Yeah.
want to hear what it sounds like for your body to be on the ground. I mean, there are some things that you can't make up, that you really do need
Right.
a level of believability. But I really understood people, and I really understood dialogue. And I think that, and I understand, controversy. I really understand friction.
Right.
I loved it. I mean, and then I moved from writing this play into journalism, and that just seemed to be, back then when there was no internet, it was a way to get into print and to have some validity to say to people, no, I really, I can have these clips, we did that in clips. And and then came the New York Times, and I had been writing for other magazines and things like that, but the Times was a very big moment.
Yeah, I would imagine. So when you have a character like Nina, who is so strong and so much just, the backbone, obviously, of this book, how does that character come to life and is born in your head? What does that look like?
I understood her. So that, it sometimes writing, and it's not so woo-woo, and I'm not a woo-woo person, but there are times where I have an idea of what this character is like. And then when I'm in the space and the character takes off in a way that's completely surprising to even me, it really is and as a writer, I'm sure you understand this.
Yeah.
It is, like that's the gift. Like let that, I try to let that happen. So I generally always know a beginning, and I figure I generally know an ending, and it's that middle, all those, so I'm not an outline writer. I don't generally
Me
write
neither.
because then you feel a little bit restricted. I know plot points, like at some point I realize I've got to get Nina to have a breakdown, or I have to have Nina found out at some point. But who's, who's going to find out this part of
Right.
the mystery? It's not them, but really understand, like, who's going to see through her. And then I had all these other characters that could have done it. And I'm very into believability. So as long as you can prove it, as long as I can justify it,
Right.
I pretty much can
Right.
write anything in that capacity, which is very different from nonfiction, having worked in both genres. Whereas nonfiction, you really do need that outline because
Yeah.
you're selling a manuscript on that, as opposed to. But there's a lot of fact checking in nonfiction. Fiction, nobody
Right.
needs to check on anything.
Yeah, you can make up a whole world in fiction for sure. So what is your writing process like? Like when you sit down to write, it's been 20 years since you wrote this book, but you've written a lot of other things and you write all the time for many publications. Are you somebody that sits down and gets it all out at one time, or do you spend time like outlining, not outlining? What does that look like for you?
I am not that writer that wakes up at 5 a.m. and is sitting in front of their computer and 4 cigarettes later, and some
Yeah.
Coca-Cola, and then there's cups of coffee. It depends if I'm on deadline for an article. If I'm writing, it depends also if I'm writing fiction or nonfiction
Yep.
or what have you. Deadlines are extremely helpful. I hear that I'm a fast writer. When you really talk to other writers, I tend to be a fast writer, even though I'm a terrible typist. I really write until, and I'm a big believer in talking into a tape recorder. I think that helps tremendously. If I'm somewhere where the feeling or the line is so specific, that line of dialogue is so specific that I can capture everything by just hearing my voice back. That will get me back into where I need to be. I will do that. Even if I have to step away from conversation or wherever and go into a bathroom or what have you.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, and I'm not that, and I am more of a night owl. I'm not much of a person.
Yeah.
And all these wacky kids who get up at
No.
5, 6 in the morning. I'm
No.
just thinking, I'm good at 1 in the morning. I
Yeah,
can
me
still be
too.
functioning.
Yeah. So what was that like, releasing a book called The Joy of Funerals? What was the reception like to this book?
We did not do well at old age homes. 20 years ago, people really didn't get it. I think the title was completely, they really were turned off by it. And that was, not certainly, I wanted something that was different and edgy and interesting and made you stop and take a pause. I didn't want you not to, pick up the book and put it down. I think streaming has helped us tremendously over the past decade or so to digest different ways to tell a story. I think that we've become grittier and our level of what we're prepared for and what we'll accept. And I think we're interested in, and I hate using the word dark. I think people confuse dark with honest. And I think that's a bit of a mistake. I think people are desperate for connection. And I think that they're trying to connect in a myriad of different ways. And again, being early to market I'm very good at finding white space, and then I'm very good at filling it. And not everybody, you can really that earliness. I had a White Lotus before there was a White Lotus based upon availability. All took place in the Four Seasons Hotel here in New York City. That came out in 2010. And how long do you until you're waving the novel and you say somebody should pick this up?
Yeah.
It's and that asks, what happens behind closed doors? How are all these people who are in this hotel for a day, a month, a week, a year, intersecting and interwoven? And so I think that is really hard. That continues to be a challenge because people are like, oh, we want something new and edgy and different. And the truth is they really don't. They think they do, or they want something that they think is edgy and different, but packaged differently.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We definitely understand. We definitely get that.
You're people that are coming together to build a community on divorce, which is brilliant and fascinating and different and was white space, which you filled, and I would think too, as much as people don't want to talk about divorce, well, now it's everybody's divorce. It's you can't not talk about how are you, it's right there. It's just as important in some sense to have the validity and the ability to embrace divorce however you want to embrace it, but at least have somewhere to go to do that, which is what you've done.
Yeah. No.
Like, I don't think 20 years ago you would have been able to have that and have it embraced the way it is right now.
By the way, 2 years ago it wasn't embraced the way.
Yeah.
No,
the narrative has changed since we
Yeah.
started the company, like greatly. I think we're part of that. I think there was a general, things like you said, there's an embrace of honesty, an embrace of grittiness, an embrace of the realness of life.
And the need for connection, right? People really want to connect. And I think that is what it comes down to. And grief, right? Whatever that grief is the great connector, right? You can't escape grief. It's not like you can lock it in a closet and put it away. But I love what you said about kind of like filling the white space. So what was the decision to bring the book back for the 20th anniversary?
20 years felt pretty big. That's not to say that it wasn't successful the first go round. We got great reviews. It was optioned a few times, and we're in the middle now of somebody else re-optioning it, which was really amazing.
Yeah.
I think that I didn't want to miss a moment again. And I think the original publishers just didn't know how to market it. And, I was reading at cemeteries and funeral homes back then. That's the book party was at Frank E. Campbell's funeral home. So I think there was also, I really understood PR and I really understood marketing, and I wanted to match a venue with the theme and have it be super memorable. And I knew that people may not, if we had missed the window of reviewing opportunities, that they would write about the party and thus write about, the people. And then, we came out of, we were in this pandemic, and I instantly, you really started to see the world crumble and how disconnected people felt.
Yeah.
And I knew coming out of it, we were going to be in a lot of trouble too. And you could see that, texting is not a relationship. It's a connection. It's a thinly threaded connection. It's not a real relationship. And swiping is not a relationship. You may start a relationship that way, but it's not, but it's, it's trick or treat. I know more about from seeing people on Insta, I like to call it Insta-Lie, on Insta-Lie, then, I've been in somebody's bris, I watched them buy the puppy, I was there to cut the cord. I have had all these moments and none of it is real. So we're caught in this familiar stranger or this, I have a connection. It's not a real connection, but it feels like a real connection. And you do know more about these people than, there are people that I know I know when they were in the hospital. I know when they bit into an apple, but I've never actually met them. So it's very confusing.
It is.
And so I thought, you know what? Fuck it. I hope I'm allowed to say that. I was like, no, fuck it. I'm just going to go back and if they don't want to reissue it, I will find somebody who does. And that's that's where we have there's a new cover. There's a letter from the author just to me, just
Mhm.
to be in all my personalities,
Yeah.
just to sort of catch the world up to
Mhm.
say,
Yeah.
look, I get it. People are scared. They're lonely. They want to connect. They want a real connection. You're not alone. These characters are lonely. They're interwoven. We ourselves need to be interwoven. We've been very fortunate. It's getting great. It's getting a very different kind of, it's being embraced very well, but it's being embraced differently. And I just think people are, it's like Cher.
Yeah.
We embrace, but it's Cher, and she's still relevant,
Always.
It's Jane Fonda in some
Always.
sense, she was lippy and ahead of her time, and
Mhm.
she's still here and she's still with it, and
Yeah.
it's now I'm gonna get both Jane and Cher kind of like, we have nothing to do with funeral.
No, I love that. I mean, we're definitely in the age of we can do hard things, right? Like I think that that's the conversation everybody's having. Like, it's not easy to be a human, but if we can human together, then we can have more power in numbers, right? We can grow together and go through this hard shit together, which is, definitely happening all the time. So, Alix, if somebody's going through a fresh start, what would be some wise words you could impart to them?
I think you are your own best investment. And I think that if you can do something to move yourself forward every day, even if it's just one thing, and whether it's business, emotionally, relationship wise, in your life, whatever it is, if it's about taking 10 minutes and not being on the phone or the computer or your, anything, if it is walking to getting a chocolate covered pretzel, whatever it is, if the investment is making a hard phone call to pitch your next book or write your next story or whatever it is, I think there needs to be a moment where there is something that you do to move yourself forward, however you choose to do that every day. And then if you get brilliant and great at doing that, you make it two things. And then
I love that.
I love that.
I love that. I'm going to adapt that mindset.
I feel like I did that yesterday. I took a big swing. I submitted an essay to Modern Love yesterday that I've had for like 2 years. And I was like, I'm just going to do it because it's just sitting. Like I may as well. So that was my investment. And I like that, the way you put it.
Because truly, what's the worst that they didn't look? The truth is, they didn't know who you were before. Right. They're not going to know. They may not know who you were after. Yeah. You don't lose anything.
No,
except an opportunity.
Yeah,
but people confuse this constantly. They think opportunity automatically means it's good. It's not. Opportunity, that's why there's a good opportunity or a bad opportunity. But you are increasing your chance for a better value to reach a goal by sending it in. You're to be successful. Nothing's going to happen if it's just sitting there.
Yeah, exactly. I love that. So before we let you go, what is the last thing that you ate and truly loved?
I did have really great vegetable pad thai the other day. I would have to say there's a chocolate babka recently.
Jenny
that
loves
has
babka.
Ella in it. And I was like, oh my God.
From Bread's? Was it from Bread's Bakery?
It was from Bread's. Those people at Bread's, they should be both arrested and given an award. It is like an edible crack cocaine in a different way. I'm very good at, I have a lot of, control in certain areas like that. Even if it's frozen, then it's gone so quickly. That's how much, like butter and whatever that doesn't even freeze.
Yeah.
I put it in somebody else's apartment and I'm like, and that's bad because I have their key.
I once bought that. My ex and I were once going to the Met, I think, with his parents, and we bought it like on the way, and we just had it in a bag, and we were just tearing off the pieces of it and eating it the whole way. And he was like that. He was very like health conscious, but he loved babka, and he was just tearing off pieces and eating it as we walked around up to the Met.
I love that.
And then by the end, the bag is done. It's gone.
Yeah. It's gone. I think by the time we got there, we didn't have any to share with his parents.
The babka snack. Yeah. I love
it's
that.
unlike candy corn, which like after 8 pieces, you're like, oh my God, I'm done.
No, that babka is good.
Sweet.
It's somehow bottomless.
Alix, you are a delight. And I truly am, I'm after this conversation racking my brain of what you don't do. Is there anything you don't do? Is there anything you're bad at? I'm just like,
I'm terrible at volleyball.
okay.
It's very specific.
And I would not do well bungee jumping. And
Me neither.
but
yeah.
I'm everybody, you know what? I am everyone's 3 a.m. call because I can reattach a limb. So
Okay. We might need to have you come back on to talk about that.
Explain that one, yeah.
You have such a worldly big energy, and I just feel like there's so much coming for you. Like, I'm so excited to follow you and to see what comes next for you and to read everything you do. I mean, we could honestly have you come back just to talk about the recent articles you've written, like the apartment that you just posted that was like $500 a month. I mean, that was
Crazy.
insane.
Yeah, that he found this like Sistine Chapel. It was on the ceiling was insanity. And they haven't gotten it appraised, which I think is even more crazy. Like, that's if I found a Picasso, first thing I would do is like, how much is this worth?
Right.
Yeah.
Well, your joy is beautiful to see, and for whatever you're doing. And so just thank you for your time and keep being you.
Ladies, thank you so much. This was so thoughtful of you to invite me on the show. And I really am enjoying the space that you're creating. I mean, like, what you've created is so important.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to today's episode. A Fresh Story podcast is produced by Fresh Starts Registry, the first and only platform for everything you need to begin again, from home items to Hype Team and everything in between. You can learn more and read today's show notes at afreshstory.com.
Are you a freelancer, solopreneur, writer, creative, or professional looking to achieve your goals within a supportive community? Have you found that working from home on your own gets lonely? That you're missing the accountability and community of a positive workplace environment? We understand. And we're so excited to introduce you to the Fresh Starts Collective. For just $35 per month, gain access to 6 daily offerings a week, including virtual co-working, open office hours for business coaching, accountability sessions, and networking opportunities. Enjoy expert workshops, monthly events, and an extensive content library. Connect with marketing, design, and writing professionals to brainstorm and grow together. Surround yourself with accountability, community, and growth. Elevate your journey with the Fresh Starts Collective for only $35 per month. Visit freshstartsregistry.com and join us today.